Hello, friends. Today we are here at Heart of Hollywood interview series one more time with a very talented author. Her name is Barbie Burris. And so, Barbie, how are you doing today?
Okay, I'm good. Thank you very much.
So, Barbie, where are you from? And you are an author. I believe I see the cover of your book in the background, and you have the beautiful painting.
Yes.
Where are you from, Barbie?
I was born in Los Angeles, but moved to Oklahoma when I was 3. So I was raised in a very small town called OK, O-K-A-Y, OK, Oklahoma. It was once on Jeopardy as the most positive town in the United States because it's OK, OK.
Well,
and that's kind of been my life motto.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely need to visit that town. So you are an author, and can you tell me a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it?
Yes. The name of my book is Bedsores and Butterflies. And I moved to New York in 2012, and I visited the grave of Mark Twain, one of my greatest heroes ever. And I joked that I was going to finally write my book, but I actually began there in New York. My middle son was in acting school, and my other 2, one was finishing high school and the other one was in college. And I told my children all their life to follow their dreams. And I didn't want to die a writer. I wanted to die an author. And I had to put my money where my mouth was, so to speak. And it was something I actually completed in my life was my book. And my biggest purpose in that was to show my sons, my children, that there's merit in pushing through fear.
How did you choose the title for your book? There is Bedsores and Butterflies. Where did the title come from?
It was a term that came to me as a hospice chaplain that kind of rolled around inside me for a while, and I wrote it as a poem. And the bed sores, I was dealing with terminally ill patients that literally, I had a little lady that had been a Christian all of her life, and yet she had bed sores to her spine. And it showed me that even in that place, I was kind of taught that if you do good, God does good. If you do bad, God does bad. And that's not true. That's not true. God is over all of it. And as I went through my experiences in hospice, I found God in the bed sores of life over and over, as well as saw areas in my life that I needed to move, that I hadn't been moving. When we get stagnant and we stay in one place, we can get bed sores.
Well, thank you for sharing. One of the descriptions that you talk about your book is that you tell the stories in your book from the dark to in a way that you use humor and you use light in order to share the stories. Why that is important to you?
Humor has always been a coping mechanism all of my life. Both of my parents were hilarious. And it wasn't always easy growing up, but it was usually funny. And so I've gone through a lot of things in my life. One of the most profound is when I was 14, my best friend was murdered. And humor over and over and over has been an anchor in my life to pull me out of the depths. There's always been a way that even God, people call him the universe, but the Holy Spirit has brought things to me in a humorous way so that I could deal with it in a way I couldn't otherwise. And I found in hospice over and over, my humor kept coming out despite myself. And it was what people needed, because a merry heart does do good like a medicine.
I noticed that this is your first edition for this book, and you are working in a second edition, or you already launched the second edition?
It's a second book, a whole second book called Rainbows and Unicorns. It's a sequel. It'll be a sequel to Bedsores and Butterflies. And Rainbows and Unicorns came about when 8 years ago I was getting out of a horrible part in my life, and I hadn't cried most of my life, and I couldn't quit crying during this time. And one of my friends was holding me, and it just came out of my mouth, Rainbows and Unicorns. And it was like, suck it up, Barbie. And I dried my tears. And so every time I would start getting all mental, I'd just go, Rainbows and Unicorns. And that helped me walk out of the darkness. It was literally a suck it up code, like grab yourselves by the bootstraps and pull yourself up. It's impossible to be sad when you think about rainbows and unicorns. And then it became the title of my second book.
Well, Barbie, I really like that title personally. So, Rainbows and Unicorns is your book. What kind of audience it will be a good to read your book?
You know, I've been very blessed. My first book has been read in the junior high schools, been passed around the junior high schools by kids, and it went through the jails. So I purposely wrote to a wide range. I purposely wrote in a way that could be understood. God was very faithful, and almost 30 years ago for the government, I was part of a team that rewrote letters for the whole nation and made them easier to understand. And so that's how I purposely wrote my book, in an easy to understand format with lessons that can be understood by a 9-year-old or a 90-year-old.
So, will you suggest that your book is good for adolescents, teenagers groups?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I hope that this grows, I just got a box in today when I got home. A box of my books was on the porch. I was so excited. I hope that this grows. I would love to be able to donate my books to prisons. That's a goal.
Can you share the cover of your book? Can you put it up for we all can see the cover?
So they digitized my first painting. And I had, as a minister, I was teaching conferences called Metamorphosis. So the butterfly became very personal to me. And at the time I was a worm, but I just thought I was a butterfly. And I realized that is a process we go through over and over. Transformation is, it's not a one-time deal like I thought it was 10 years ago.
Well, and talking about transformation, you just mentioned something about that you would like to have your book on the available to for the people that is in jails. What is that?
I think because I spent a lot of my life in prison emotionally, and God showed me, and there's actually a Christian song that our chains hold the keys to our freedom. And so I just found over and over, I had people writing me from the jails about my book. And so I saw that it was touching a population there in that darkness. And, you know, my book over and over, the stories just point to seeing God every single day in your life. Whether you're in a jail cell or a schoolroom or wherever you find yourself, He is sovereign and He is good. So to me, the prison is, to me, that maybe the darkest place the human soul can be in, and that's where I hope to reach to.
Well, I think that the sunlight that can go through those doors and it can be your book. Why not to do so? So I wish that things moving forward to that goal can be possible. Perhaps one of our Heart of Hollywood audience is interested in a sponsor or some books for those books get to the Christians. Well, and going back to your book, what that story? There is any story that you can share about your book? Like what kind of stories the audience is expecting to read?
Well, I'm just going to tell you the one that's coming to mind. So, and remember that you asked for it. No, it's not too bad. I was a hospice chaplain, and I was going to visit a little man in a town called Fort Gibson, and I would go sit on his back porch while he smoked cigars and told me stories. And we visited for months throughout his illness as he declined. And I got the call one day that they had to put him in the nursing home. He was crashing, as we called it. And so I get to the nursing home and they said, "Oh, the chaplain's here," you know, and I walk in and the room is quiet. And the shades are down. It's the middle of the afternoon, but the room is dark, you know, and he hasn't responded or moved in hours. His daughter that I've been talking to throughout these months is there, you know, and I've hugged her, and I sit down on the side of that man's bed and he sits up and just begins screaming. And I thought it was like a miraculous, you know, he immediately fell back down, and I had sat on his catheter. I don't know if you know what a catheter is,
No,
but
I know what it is.
okay, he had a catheter inside of him, and he went back down, and shortly, not long thereafter, he went into paradise. And a couple of years later, I was speaking at a church, and his daughter came up to me and asked me if I remembered that story. And I said, oh my goodness, you know, and it was just for me over and over. God broke my pride over and over. He showed me He was God and I was not. And when that happened, the daughter actually started during that moment that was so dark and so heavy. The daughter just started laughing. It was just it ended up being a humorous, crazy moment in that darkness. And I over and over embarrassed myself in a way to help bring those things about. So I like to write those stories, that
Well,
how
I
I look like.
what I'm sensing is like a channel that you have, that you're being like a channel in order to channel in all those stories. And now you have a beautiful book to share, to everyone. So I think that that's wonderful. So congratulations in your job to put those stories together and taking the time. So you was mentioning the painting that is behind you is your first painting, and I can see there is a cover of your book as well.
Yes.
So how the process was to do your painting?
In 2003, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer and ended up in a hospital bed. He had built our home and built cars, and so I went and got him a paint set so he could do something with his hands. And he lived over another year and a half, and he painted over 100 paintings from his hospital bed. So 7 years later, when my life fell apart on my birthday, I went and got myself a paint set when I lived in New York. I was working double shifts at an Applebee's, taking a taxi to work. And I went over and just invested in me, in something I was so afraid to even think that I could do. And out of it came this on the other side of that fear. I painted that on my birthday in 2012. And in 2014, my book was released with that on the cover.
Well, I think that that's wonderful. And then do you have other paintings as well?
Yes, I have a whole gallery, a whole shop full of paintings, and I'm working on it now. I do commissions. I'm working on a commission painting now for somebody. So now I'm painting for money, and I never would have imagined.
Well, I think that you are a multi-talented artist, which is always find a way to use their imagination to their best. So Barbie, how our Hollywood audience can find more about your book and about yourself?
All right. Well, I would encourage everybody to go to my Facebook page. And then I also, something I didn't talk about that is very important to me is I do a YouTube channel. It's also on Facebook, and it's called Not Church Church. And so it's just, we are the church. It's just messages about God and his goodness outside the church walls. So I do 6 and 7 minute messages, and sometimes I dress up like crazy characters. So you can find me on Facebook looking at, I've got JoJo Namaste, Eureka Davis, JJ Electric. They're all in here, all different voices and characters. But please find me on Facebook or YouTube under Not Church Church.
Well, Barbie, thank you so much. And what was your most memorable experience while writing a book and sharing it with the audience?
I would have to say it was just recently, was in February, and that was through DIA. DIA is a part of this organization called Prevent Abuse in Neighborhoods. And I just got to share my book and my stories at the Tulsa Women's Expo from a stage, and encourage other women to press on through to the other side of fear and follow your hopes and dreams.
Well, thank you so much, Barbie. This has been a wonderful interview with you, and we hope to have a second interview in regards to your new book, Rainbows and Unicorns. I think they're gonna be a hit. I especially love the title. So when is it going to be ready?
I hope it's out at Christmas. I hope.
Christmas. Okay.
Christmas.
The audience for the Rainbows and Unicorn, it will be also for teenagers?
It's a little heavier.
Okay.
But I'm going to say teenagers, yes. I don't know about 9-year-olds anymore, because Rainbows and Unicorns got heavier, and the humor's all still through there, but there's just some heavier subject matter. But for sure, teens, Rainbows and Unicorns has, I would say, more themes of domestic violence and overcoming those mentalities.
Okay. And so why did you write about domestic violence in your book, the Rainbows and Unicorn? It's a little bit of contrasting title and subject.
Exactly. It was domestic. I was in domestic violence when the term Rainbows and Unicorns came to me to be able to get out. I would be crying, and I heard rainbows. The first time I heard it was Rainbows and Unicorns, and I saw it in my mind, and it was just like it was just God being funny with me. I saw rainbows and unicorns, and so from then on, I never forgot that moment. And that helped me walk out of domestic violence and keep walking and not go back. So I wrote about domestic violence because I experienced it when I was young. And then I was out in the world speaking about it while I lived in it unknowingly. And so when my eyes were opened and, you know, you can't see the forest from the trees, now that I'm out of domestic violence, it is for me, my purpose and my job to turn around to my sisters and my brothers behind me and throw my hand out to the valleys I just came through with the tools that help me walk out and stay out.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing. And so, Barbie, what will be your message as an author that you will have for our Heart of Hollywood audience?
I don't have the painting in here, but just, oh gosh, that's a heavy question. What would be my message? Never lose hope. Never lose hope. God never loses hope in us, even when we do. Or even if we think we may lose it in him, he never loses hope in us. And I was taught that God didn't follow me into the darkness, but the darkness is exactly where I found God. He brought me into the light from that place.
Well, Barbie, thank you so much for sharing your story. And we will be very, very happy to continue following up with you, learning more about your upcoming book, Rainbows and Unicorns, and perhaps other books. So has been a wonderful interview with you. Thank you again. And can you repeat one more time how the Heart of Hollywood, how our Heart of Hollywood audience can find you?
You can find me on Facebook under Barbie Burris. You can find me on YouTube under my Not Church channel. And you might have to put in Eureka Davis with that to find me on YouTube as well.
Well, thank you so much, Barbie. And thank you for all our Heart of Hollywood audience. We are continue to keep you in tune with all their new updates. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.